Hey everyone, getting ready to go on for Real Talk and the Other People's Show. You can listen to the full show on um, 92.5 WLSD The Vault or WLSDradio.com. And thank you everyone for tuning in on Friday, February 27th, 2026 at 10:01 p.m. on 92.5 WLSD The Vault. 12:20 a.m. WLSDradio.com. Thank you for joining tonight. This is the first episode of Real Talk since we covered the Blues Brothers back in early January. Took a little bit of a break, and we're back tonight with the movie Nick of Time, a 1995 movie, excuse me, starring Johnny Depp. But before we get into that, please go to all the social media. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. I hope everyone out there is having a great night. Now, this is a movie that I know not a lot of people have seen. And to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of people have actually heard of this movie. Now, this was back in a time when Johnny Depp wasn't the Johnny Depp that you know of now. He did have the success of 21 Jump Street. He had Edward Scissorhands, Crybaby. I think he had done What's Eating Gilbert Grape before that. But that was kind of a movie that Leo kind of stole. And Don Juan DeMarco, Benny and June. So Johnny Depp was trying to break out of just that, he was above, like a 20-year-old something, but he was trying to break out of that teen heartthrob, Tiger Beat magazine phase of his career. And this is one of the rare instances early on where he was where he was kind of cast as a every man that wasn't beneath prosthetics, makeup, a weird voice, and he was just an everyman who's kind of thrown into this very suspenseful scenario. And this was not a movie that many people thought that Johnny Depp would have done then or even now looking back. Now, looking back at this, I and my mother went to. I'd seen, like I've mentioned many times on the show, the Entertainment Weekly was a magazine that I accidentally got by mistake, and I'd seen it earlier in my childhood. I was telling a friend the other day how one of the first ones I'd seen was a magazine with Brandon Lee as he had died. Not as he had died, but he had passed away, and he was on the front cover of because of the movie The Crow. And a few years later, this film was featured in the fall releases of 1995, and I was like, I definitely have to check this out. And they do have this listed on IMDb as a political thriller, psychological thriller, action, crime, and drama. And I guess it is kind of all those, but this movie is a little bit unique in the fact that it takes place in real time. It's a 90-minute movie, and it takes place within 90 minutes within that movie. And not a lot of movies do that. So to give you a little bit of the plot, it is about an unimpressive everyday man is forced into a situation where he is told to kill a politician to save his kidnapped daughter. And that's basically the plot in a nutshell. Nutshell, not nutshell, not shell. And you know, Johnny Depp's character, his name is I think it is Gene Watson. Him and his daughter get off a train. They're in the train station, and you've got two people there. You've got Miss Jones and Miss Smith, played by Roma Mafia and Christopher Walken, and they're looking for someone who is showing that they would do anything for somebody that they love. And then they spot a couple. He's like too old. They spot another younger couple that can't keep their arms and lips off one another. They start to approach them, and then they realize they are foreigners and they don't speak English. So there's no way they can use them. Then they see Gene Watson. And then this kind of dates the movie a little bit. He's using a payphone, and he is his daughter. There's some rollerbladers within in this train station, kind of causing havoc, trying to take the little girl's stuffed animal. Jumping over luggage, just causing a little bit of pandemonium. And then Mr. Smith and Miss Jones happen to see Gene Watson's reaction to the rollerbladers, trying to take his daughter's stuffed animal. He knocks over, a cigarette. This is when you could smoke inside, so there were ashtrays everywhere. Those big ashtrays, and just knocks all the rocks and everything into the floor. The rollerbladers fall, and then Mr. Smith and Miss Jones approach Mr. Watson and is like, "Listen, we're the police. We need to speak to you immediately." They take him and his daughter out to the van quickly because they do show a badge. And within the confounds of this van, he's like, if you do not, Christopher Walken as Mr. Smith is just like, this is your directive. You are to kill the person inside this envelope in 90 minutes. And if you don't, your daughter dies. Gene's like, listen, I would do no such thing. So Christopher Walken hits him in the knee with the barrel of the gun. A barrel of I think it's a 45. I'm not 100% sure about that. And he does it again. And then within the confines of the next 90 minutes, Johnny Depp as Gene Watson is trying to either kill the governor or try to tell someone, get help, listen. But as he's doing this, as he's going to the shoe shine man, as he tries to approach some other officers or security looking people, Watson finds out that a lot of the staff and a lot of the officers are in on this. He doesn't know how far this goes. And this all basically takes place within, I would say it takes place 90% of the movie within this hotel. And it's a big lavish hotel, different rooms, and lots of characters in there, and no one really knows what's going on. And this is one where there's some close-ups of Gene Watson. His face is sweating. He's panicked. He's frantic. I mean, how would you behave if you're an accountant, you're getting off a train, a badge is shoved in your face, come with us, you get into this van, you kill this woman, you kill this politician. And it's the governor that's actually running for re-election that you learn moments later. And if you do not do this, it's 1:30 now. If you do not have this accomplished by 3 p.m., we are going to take your daughter. Not only are we going to take her, we're going to kill her. What would you do? Because you have to imagine this is a time, like I said, in the 90s. There's no payphone. I mean, there's payphone, but there's no cell phone. There's no reaching out through text message. There's what you have in front of you. And every time that Johnny Depp as Gene Watson tries to, alert someone, please help me, what's going on? Mr. Smith is there. So that's kind of the dilemma that we're faced with this movie. Now, this movie was not a movie that did well with critics. It didn't do well with audience members at the time. I think personally it was released around the wrong time of year. It was released, if my recollection is correct, it is around Thanksgiving of 1995. Because the reason I remember this is because I went to, like I'd said earlier in the show, I went to the movies, and my mom and I, for a little while, we had, my sisters joined in too, but not this particular time. They were with their grandparents. had joined in, when we would do like a family movie. And my sisters were with my grandparents. So my mom was like, what do you want to go see? So this was the movie that I chose to go see. But when we got there, the projector was malfunctioning. So we weren't able to watch it because they didn't show it. So we ended up going to the Coburn movie theater and watching Ace Ventura When Nature Calls, which is a completely different kind of movie. But that's how I know when this movie came out, because on Thanksgiving evening, we were watching Ace Ventura When Nature Calls in the middle theater of the Coburn Cinema, if you remember that. Now, back to Nick of Time. Now, Nick of Time had a budget of $33 million. And watching it, I thought this is kind of a high budget for this kind of movie. I mean, Johnny Depp was making probably 3 to 4 million per film at that time. Christopher Walken and the rest of the cast, I think Chris Walken probably got at least half a mil, maybe a mil, and the rest of the cast would probably equal up to $500,000. So you've got what, 5 million or so in cast. So the rest is shot on location. And I did have an itinerary typed out. I typed out the itinerary, but I had it folded. You can hear me folding a sheet of paper. I had it folded and I left it inside of my, by not my Bible, but a book that I'm reading called I can't even think of the name of the money. The book, The Brothers, the Duplass brothers. It's a filmmaking book. But anyway, back to Nick of Time. So this movie did not do well financially. I tried to look, and there's not any CGI. It's not that kind of a movie. It's like I said, it's a thriller. It's a surveillance thriller, political thriller, and it's kind of I wouldn't go full fledged into action mode, action movie. Now there are some action set pieces in the movie. Johnny Depp does fire the gun multiple times. Multiple people are shot and killed. But other than that, this would not be what I would consider to be, an action movie per se. If you're looking for straight action, like a Lethal Weapon movie or a John Wick, this is going to, disappoint you. But you'll learn quite quickly that that's not this kind of movie. And I don't know what they were thinking, maybe counter programming to Ace Ventura, but no one went to see this movie in the theater. I finally did see it in the theater, and I think if I recall correctly, I was the only one in there. So this movie made $8.1 million in the box office, costing 33 million. So it was not a financial success by any stretch of the imagination. With the critics and the audience at the time, you got 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience just said 47%. And on IMDb, it had a little better at 6.3. And I'm not sure what people are really expecting, or I'm not really sure what they, what if people are going back in hindsight trying to, look into Johnny Depp's filmography, because this is one that I've never heard anyone else say that they've even heard of, except one person. When I posted the ad on the Facebook page, uh, one of the fans said that she had heard of it before. It was one of her favorite movies. And I was really surprised. I was like, wow, you're the only person. This is one of those kind of movies where I've mentioned it a few times throughout my life. And no one has ever heard of it. And here's kind of a little bit of the score. I think it fits. It rewatching it, I know as a kid when I watched it, I was into older movies than what I should have been, I guess. But it did seem, even at 90 minutes at that time, a little bit slow. But maybe as a younger kid, I was looking for that more action sequence, and because that's kind of what the trailer might paint it as a little bit. But as I rewatched it as an adult, which I hadn't watched it in many, many years, I'd say quite a few years, but it actually is a good movie. It's a fine movie, and I hate that more people have not actually seen the movie. So, did I have any you pretty much you've got Johnny Depp, you've got Christopher Walken, Courtney Chase as the daughter, um, and everyone does a good job. I mean, everyone does what you'd expect them to do. Christopher Walken has his little, odd mannerisms and quips and ticks that you've come to know Christopher Walken by. But at this point in his career, I don't think he had turned into, well, obviously there weren't things as memes, but he hadn't turned into, the meme of Christopher Walken now, or the caricature of him. This was still the Christopher Walken of you've just the odd movies that he had been in. You've got and so many of them are just going by. You got uh, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And you've got Christopher Walken movies later on in his career. Like if you remember, he was the father on Wedding Crashers. So you've got that later Christopher Walken in the 2000s and stuff. But this was still like when he was doing New York. I think it was called New York, New York, or New York City. He was doing Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, Suicide Kings. He was in Pulp Fiction. Christopher Walken was doing a lot of these gangster type movies, and this wasn't that necessarily, but it's in the same vein. Same vein. He was in The Prophecy, and he often played the bad guy. Christopher Walken, also a young Christopher Walken, he has a small cameo in the Woody Allen movie Annie Hall. And I think if I remember correctly, he drives the car really, really fast in the rain, and it's kind of odd to see that of Christopher Walken, especially that young. But this is the Christopher Walken. Not too long after this, he did the Fat Boy Slim video, and he become what he is now. But this is probably prime. Johnny Depp hadn't yet had the success of Pirates of the Caribbean. He hadn't had the success of Secret Window, Finding Neverland, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. A lot of these type movies had not yet happened, and that would later happen. So this would basically be a footnote in everyone's career that was a part of it. And it's really a shame. I don't honestly know when this movie would have worked. They probably honestly should have released it in September, maybe October. I don't think the box office would have been that much better, but I think it would have made at least double digits, maybe at least 15 to 20. But the director, you have to think, John Badham, you may not know him, but I'm sure that you've seen some of the movies that he's directed, especially in the 80s and the 90s, because he was someone that kind of did these mid-level movies, and more often than not at the time, they had been a success. Most of the movies he had, um, been involved with were a success. And just to name a few of those, you've got War Games with Matthew Broderick. You've got Drop Zone the year before this with Wesley Snipes, another Stakeout. I'm going in decreased order. Point of No Return. You've got The Hard Way with Michael J. Fox and James Woods. If you haven't seen that, now it is a brutal, R-rated comedy with Michael J. Fox being an actor who wants to play this role of Nick. I can't think of his last name, but he's like an actor in the movie, and he's fashioning his character after James Woods' real life detective in the film. It's a good one. Bird on the Wire with Mel Gibson and Goldie Hawn. Stakeout, Short Circuit, American Flyers with Kevin Costner. Like I said, War Games with Matthew Broderick. Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta. So this was a director that had directed a lot of movies that people had heard of. And sadly, if you go in and you look at his IMDb, he directed the movie Incognito the year after Nick of Time, which was his last theatrical movie, which was his last movie. He went into TV not long after that. So this wasn't a movie that was just slapped together. This was backed by Paramount Pictures, given a holiday release of 1995. They were trying to position Johnny Depp to be what Johnny Depp originally became, initially, but it didn't happen with this film. And looking back, I was young, so I had no way of even knowing the trajectory of some careers and such. But I did know that Johnny Depp would have been an actor, even then at a young age, that was going to be around for a while, wasn't going to be just a flash in the pan. And he's still, even though he's not making movies quite like he was back in the 2000s, even 2010s, um, he still has a big filmography. And let's go back a little bit. I'm on the IMDb page right now. Let's go back a little bit, and I'll tell you what he had done until this point, which I think is pretty much what I'd said. He was in Into the Great Wide Open, the Tom Petty music video. He was the guy on TV in Freddy is Dead, The Final Nightmare. Benny and June, 93. Also, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, 93. Ed Wood is a Johnny Depp film directed by Tim Burton. Probably one of his best. And I watched this with my sister a lot as a kid. This was one of the movies that it's in black and white. It's about filmmaker Ed Wood. It's got a fantastic cast. Bill Murray. You got Sarah Jessica Parker is in it. You got Johnny Depp. I'm trying to think who else is in it right away. I can't think. It's been a while since I've watched it, but it is a good one. Don Juan DeMarco, 1994. And then you've got Dead Man in 95. Nick of Time in 95. And he doesn't really take off. He gets a hit movie with Donnie Brasco in 1997, but Johnny Depp wasn't really featured in a lot of hit movies. Sleepy Hollow being one that was starting in 1999. And then after that, we know how it goes. But this is an early movie in Johnny Depp's career that I think that if you want to deep dive into his career and to see him play like a more normal type person, he's a little bit nervous. He's not nervous as he is as Ichabod Crane in Sleepy Hollow, and he's not as pure and innocent as he is in Edward Scissorhands. But this is a meld, and this I'd say this is probably a mid to late 20s Johnny Depp in this movie. And he was trying to, I don't know if he was doing it. His agents were saying, listen, let's try to get you in on more of the adult action fare, which is what I think they were trying to do. But yeah, speaking of score, I think it has a good score. And it wants you to think about clocks because the clock is always ticking in this movie. So yeah, in the poster for this movie, now the poster on probably Blu-ray and DVD and stuff like that is kind of they've redesigned it and made it like a blue hue to it. But the original poster had Nick of Time in white letters. You kind of see a blurry Johnny Depp running. You see he's got a tie on, a gun in hand, and then you see the very intense close-up of his face, and he wears glasses in this movie, spectacles. But yeah, I think it's on Tubi. I actually purchased this the other day for like $5 on Fandango. I was going through. I was like, I've got to get myself back into doing the movies, on the movies. Not on the movies, but Real Talk on the movies is the show that Jake and I did. And I didn't anticipate this was going to be the movie that I opened coming back with. I thought let's do something that the audience might want. Let's do something that that they've mentioned time and time again. So I thought about going with one of those, and then I just happened to find myself watching Nick of Time, and I hadn't been able to really focus on movies a lot the last this year, to be honest with you. But this was the first time that I was really able to sit there and watch and actually enjoy, and it was a good nostalgic feeling because I'd seen it a few times earlier in my life. So if you want to check out a movie that is not like your typical Johnny Depp movie, it's a little bit of a thriller, a throwback, and it has some nice little 90s touches to it. Like I said, you've got the ashtray in the subway, not the subway, but the train station. You also have the payphone in there, and you've got people actually having to interact with others and not just stand around with a cell phone or text this and that. So this movie could be made today, and it would be very interesting because there's one part in this movie where, and you get the sense that he's being followed several times because there's a couple throughout the movie. They're videoing, just things throughout the hotel. And multiple times when the couple happens to see Gene Watson, their camera turns toward him and they're recording him. And it doesn't really become of anything, but you kind of notice that throughout the film, and it gives it a little bit of a more suspense, like who is in on this. He doesn't know, just as like we don't know, the audience doesn't know. So that's kind of what is wrapping up the Nick of Time. I would recommend it. It's not going to be great, and if you can get to, the first 15 minutes into it, it starts off pretty quickly, and the movie goes relatively fast. It's 90 minutes. Everyone does a respectable job. There's no half doing it. And will it turn out the way you expect? Maybe it will. Maybe it will. I'm not going to say if it. I mean, I can't give it away, even though it's this long ago. But I would definitely say, if you're in the mood for an early or mid '90s thriller starring Johnny Depp and Christopher Walken, The Nick of Time is something that you should definitely devote 90 minutes of your time to. So, thank you for tuning in tonight for the first edition of Real Talk in quite a while. It is 10:26 p.m. and in just a moment we're going to be starting the Other People's Show. But before that, please go to all the social medias. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, the Other People's Show. And I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next week. I think it's going to be something fun. I think it's going to be something that maybe it's audience choice. And I do have a special, yeah, I guess I could say a special a test producer coming in tonight, working with me with the Other People's Show. I don't think she is going to go on air. I've just got a message she's arrived, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Auditioning some new people for roles on the show. As you probably noticed, we have a revolving cast of characters on this show, and that's what we like to do. We like to keep the audience on their feet, on their toes, and I like to have friends on the show. I like to have enemies come on the show. I like to have people that like me come onto the show, and I like to have people that despise me. There's about 16 to 20 of those. Other than that, most people like me. I would say 87% of people like me, and probably 10% of people don't, and probably 3% of people don't know, and 100% of people, I don't care if they do or not. So thank you for tuning in tonight. Stay tuned for the Other People's Show on 92.5 WLSD, The Vault. Yeah, come on. No, I'm not on. I'm just on the live stream. You don't have to whisper. You don't have to whisper. Are you going to not speak? Okay. Okay. You can just sit right there. In its right place. In its right place. 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 And thank you everyone for tuning in. Friday, February 27th, 2026, 10:29 p.m. on this Friday. I might have already said that. And we're having a good time tonight. The Other People's Show just finished up Real Talk, got a test producer in studio. Don't want me to give your name? Just the shaking of the head. That's okay. it takes some time sometimes for people to warm up, because you'll realize, it's kind of just like having a regular conversation. Now, sometimes you have the conversation with yourself, sometimes you're having the conversation with the people watching, the people across from you on all the social medias, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. The other people show. Did I say that already? Hmm. But hope everyone's had a great week. My week has actually been really good. I'm very blessed, very happy about a lot of things that's been going on. Started the gym a few weeks ago. I didn't really start it for the new year, as people that can probably see on camera. I've lost quite a bit of weight. Um, but that's okay. I don't mind that. You all don't mind it. I'm still doing healthy. And the couple times I've played racquetball, I don't know how many of you all have played racquetball before, but it's a very fun sport, and it's a sport you can do just with yourself. You can play with someone else. You can have four different people playing against each other, teams. But the thing is, a lot of people don't want to give that much effort and that much work to a sport, especially when you're maybe in your 20s or 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it may be. And I'm going to be one of these people, unless something traumatic happens where I'm unable. I'm going to attempt and try and hope and pray and believe that I'm going to be able to stay physically fit for most of my life. Now, obviously, I don't know what could happen in the future, but I plan to do that. So I plan to continue doing the racquetball. I know Jeremiah wants to come and do that. There's a couple of other people that are interested. Um, they don't want me to film it, though. I like to film a lot of things because I like to have a lot of memories, a lot of pictures, a lot of memories. And I like to show a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes, because as I was discussing, this is not going to be the time to be sad and to be down. And I know that it's hard to do that with a lot of the bad things that are going on in the world. And trust me, it's not peaches and roses and gumdrops and sour jacks and nerd ropes and strawberry Twizzler peels, the pull and peel. I know what life isn't that, and I know it always can't be that. But just a little time out of your week, regardless, maybe it's the show, maybe it's another great show on 93.5 or 92.5, maybe it's a Netflix series, or maybe it's something on YouTube. It doesn't matter. You need to do something a little bit each week to take yourself out of your life, to not worry about the bills, the heating bill, the water bill, the child care, what's going on with the kids at school, all the practices you're going to. Take just a few minutes, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 10 minutes, and, do something for yourself. And don't just sit there and doom scroll, because a lot of people are on a lot, and trust me, I'm on social media a little bit, but not as much as some, because some people are just sitting there, they're all day just sitting there on social media. And if you're making money doing that, that's fine. I make a little bit on there, but I don't spend. I just can't do it. For one, I'm looking down. That would hurt my neck all the time. For two, what do I have to talk about all the time? What do I need to constantly be looking at, scrolling at? And I'm not putting you down if that's what you're doing. If you're doing, research or, into this Epstein files, more power to you. I think everyone on that list there needs to be more criminal charges brought. Let's do some real investigating work. I mean, what's been going on there? Much more can be done. Any reasonable person knows that. But when you go into your little place of solitude, don't be thinking about that, because that's going to make you have negative thoughts. Don't be thinking about the the if the ICE agents make you mad, don't be thinking about that. If the other side makes somebody mad, don't be thinking about that. The fact of the matter is, when you go into your fortress of solitude, let's borrow from Superman. You need to have that wall of solitude where you're not having these outside things brought in again for you or against you. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And it's something that I was thinking about this morning, because this morning like I've mentioned many times, I drive a lot. And I told myself, and I told God this morning, and I've said it before, but I said it this morning. I said, listen, I'm going to go 28 to 30 miles. I think it was 30 miles with no music, no outside thoughts as far as like letting them come in. And it was difficult. A couple of years back, I'd taken some classes on how to kind of be more serene and more mindful and meditation and things like that. And it was a great class. I really, really enjoyed it, but didn't put it always in practice like I should have. And, if you've seen some of the past, you know that I didn't put it into work like I should have. But today I did. And today it was about 30 minutes. And I was hoping for some kind of, not even really a revelation. I was hoping for that still small voice that you've read about, whether you believe or not. You've read about the still small voice that's from God, giving you insights of whatever it may be, whether it's a passage to memorize and use in your everyday life, whether it's a name on your tongue in your mind that you need to forgive someone, whatever it may be. I was open to interpretation of all that. Whenever negative thoughts about, people came in, I would push those out. Whenever my thoughts started drifting toward trying to create a new script or screenplay or casting, I pushed that out. Whenever I was thinking about, what to do about, going here or there or the next set of events or dating, I pushed it out. I didn't let anything from the outside in. And if it did come in, I would push it out immediately. And I would just try to focus on what I was driving. I was on a back road, driving through trees, driving through curves, and I was trying to only focus on that and nothing from the outside. And I did fairly well for the most part. I didn't put on the music. I didn't put on a podcast. I didn't reflect about anything on my day or my year, or when I've been wronged or when I've wronged others, because I was really trying to have it. Oh, it's good. I like that. Good job. And I really was trying. And I suggest that be what you all do. Now, whether you all can do it, for 30 minutes, that's up to each individual person. But I'm going to try to attempt to do something like that every day. And it might not be always driving, but driving, I have, 3 hours a day, an opportunity to do that. So, that's what I did. And I think it's helping me. I'm reading, a lot of the word in the Bible every day. I haven't read it today, but I'm trying to apply a lot of those teachings to my life, which is, I'm hoping to not only try to make myself a better person for myself, but I want to make myself a better person for those around me, because I'm not always that way, and you're not always that way. And we've all done things that we're ashamed and embarrassed of, but we cannot let that hold us down and stay there. And if we've wronged people, we've wronged people, and hopefully those people know that you're sorry, and hopefully you really are. And not to hold on to grudges, because really, and I've touched on this before. I think Casey did last time he was in studio. When you hold, or maybe it was even Jeremiah, but when you hold on to those grudges and hurt, you're truly, truly only hurting yourself. No one else is getting hurt because they don't know about it. I mean, you might tell them about it, and then it's anger spewing out all the time. And do you want anger spewing out of your mouth all the time? Because how we feel is how we talk. And there's a lot of people that I know, and they cuss a lot, and that's just who they are. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do find it. I don't get offended because I don't really get offended of anything. I don't. I honestly don't. There's nothing that you could say that would honestly offend me. Um, but there's a time and place for that kind of talk as well. And when I was younger, and we'll get on to another topic here in a moment, but when I was younger, first doing the show, the Midnight Mutant show, it was a show of, we were kind of shock jocks at the time. You know, uh, Opie and Anthony and Howard Stern, and we mentioned Bubba the Love Sponge multiple times, and I've transitioned over the years into a different kind of show because I'm not really trying to shock anyone with anything I'm trying to say. Those come in the car casts if you've watched. Those come when I'm sitting there drinking, crying, which has ceased. No more car cast. No more car cast. I think there was 9 of them. Four, maybe 5 were good. But you find yourself a place of solitude, whether it be your car, whether it be a quiet room in your house, whether it be just walking through the woods. Maybe it's at a coffee shop having coffee. Maybe for some of you all, it's sitting on the toilet. I mean, it's hard to say, but wherever you think you can get your quiet time, I think you should definitely do it. Now, there's been some speculation. I saw this earlier today. Jim Carrey's new unrecognizable puffy new look sparks fans' meltdown. Is he wearing a mask? Now, if you go in and you type in Jim Carrey in Google and go to news, um, you'll see that he was at a red carpet event where he won a honor for the 51st Caesar Award, and he was dressed in black. He was dressed in black, but he had a glitzy jacket on, and he had won the honorary Caesar, celebrating his decade-long career, a milestone moment he dedicated to his late father. So during this speech, you can see pictures of Jim Carrey's face, and his face looks like he has had way too much Botox. His face looks more round, it looks puffy. His eyes are really close together, so he may I don't know. He still has some crow's feet there, so it doesn't look like he's had any um filler or anything there, but he just did not look like himself. And I watched the video of him being um interviewed afterward, and it just doesn't sound like him. Must have had a lot of work done to his face. Looks very different, one wrote. Another fan chimed in, man, he looks different. Hasn't been in the public eye for a while. Someone some were not shy. They were like, he's turning into Bill Maher. And others were going for the jugular, referencing Kris Jenner's recent facelift, saying, oh, fire, that plastic surgeon can call Kris Jenner. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but that's not Jim Carrey, another person said. And someone also said, is he wearing a mask? Now, it does look like Jim Carrey. Don't get me wrong. Don't go on there expecting to look at somebody completely different. But it doesn't look like the Jim Carrey that we know. And I think Jim Carrey is probably, 63, 64 years old at this point. But I had seen a few pictures a while back, maybe a week or two ago, and it didn't look like Jim Carrey. And if you go back maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, even longer, he's been acting really strange and odd in public, saying that he doesn't exist, saying that there is only an idea of Jim Carrey that exists, and it exists differently in everyone's mind, and that the whole aura and the person of Jim Carrey is just a hollow shell. Now, these were these words of someone that is trying to pull an Andy Kaufman, or is this someone that has gone, has some mental problems, which he's admitted in the past that he does? I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to say you've got too much Botox or you don't, because to each of their own. There's some people out there that want to look like a cat. I'm not going to call you a cat, but you can look like a cat if you want to. That's fine by me. I don't care what you do. Just leave me alone, you know. Now, Botox is something that a lot of people get. I get it. I don't get it every week, like it's been rumored. Now, here's another thing before we go on. There's some kind of saying about rumors. I'm not exactly sure the saying, but you know, probably a lot of the rumors that have surrounded a lot of these people are not true. Uh, are some of them probably cannibals? Yes, they are. Are some of them getting way too much Botox? Jim Carrey and Mickey Rourke, way too much? Yes, but there is a right amount, and you know yourself what that right amount is if you get it. And if you're a celebrity, why would you get it all at one time? Why would you not do this a little bit over the years? So therefore, instead of looking drastically younger or different at one time, you keep it consistent from the time you're 35 to the time you're 70 or whenever it may be. Why suddenly don't do anything and then you get 100 units of Botox in your forehead and it looks as flat as a billboard and as shiny too? That's why you do it consistently over the years. And that's just the smart way to do it. The Jim Carrey was one of the first comedians when I was like, I want to venture into comedy. You know, I'd went through some dark times in my life the couple years preceding um, you know, when Jim Carrey first emerged. You know, he came out with all those hits in the 1995 Ace Ventura. Then there was Dumb and Dumber. Then there was The Mask, back to back to back. And then after that, he had Batman Forever. So you didn't have anyone with that, you know, catastrophic rise in a long, long time without, you know, without a flop. And then the Cable Guy came around, you know, in '96, and that was his first flop. And it wasn't really even a flop. It was kind of a disappointment because it was expected to make, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars when it wasn't the kind of movie that everyone thought it was. And now in hindsight, everyone seems to really hold it at a better place than they did at the time. And everyone was really disappointed because they just didn't expect that Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was one of the first people when I do remember, and I didn't see, you know, I was transitioning out of the, you know, I've always been in the dark phase, a little bit, you know, from a teenager up until now. And I've always kind of flirted the line of, you know, kind of like I've said, on the darker side of things, on the more morose side of things, even if it's comedically dark or on the fringes of society, kind of like this radio show. We are on the fringes of mainstream society, and that's the way I want it to be. You know, would it be great, for example, there was a criticism, uh, I don't want to say who it is, it's a laughable criticism, but they were putting down some of the numbers of the show. And if I wanted the show to have more numbers, the show would have more numbers. But I'm comfortable where the show is right now because I don't need any more eyes looking on me at what I've been going through than what I've already made available. So I'm comfortable in the level of I am, you know, in the podcast world, the fans that we have, the audience that we have, which is a good audience. So I'm very proud of that, and not proud in like a boastful way, but I'm very honored, I guess would be a way to say that. Honored to be on the station, honored to present things to you all, honored to come up with topics and conversation that hopefully you all will enjoy as well. And you know, that's what we try to do here on the show. But I'm not going to really put down Jim Carrey. Does he sound weird? I wish I had a little bit of audio here. Let's see if I can find some audio. But he does. It doesn't look like 100% Jim Carrey. And it was kind of like I think there's a conspiracy theory going around now also about Britney Spears not really being her. And there was also something that I recently learned, and maybe this is something that's going around, is that there's a conspiracy theory that's going around, something to do with Garth Brooks being a serial killer. And I just now thought about that because that's something that I actually wanted to bring up. Now, it sounds ridiculous to begin with if you think of this. So Garth Brooks, you everyone knows who Garth Brooks is. But if you go on TikTok and look, there is a conspiracy theory going around that Garth Brooks is a serial killer. And let me get a little bit of information about that and let you all know this. I remember this Garth Brooks song. So it seems that Garth Brooks has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons across this past week as the country music legend faces a allegation lawsuit from his former hair and makeup artist. However, that can be battled in court. Folks on social media, though, there's another ugly label being attached to the country music singer. That label is none other than a serial killer. You read that right. Social media is stirring again with discussions of whether or not the country music singer is a serial killer. And if you're wondering just what in the heck this is all about, you should know there's not a shred of evidence to support any of this talk. Not one. So, how did this get on social media? Why is this going around? Well, it turns out this is a long running conspiracy theory that appears to have started out as a joke before gaining momentum on X. And it started off that what we can tell, multiple reports say that it began with comedian Tom Segura and Brooks's 2018 concert tour announcement. At the end of the video, Brooks says, "Let's get physical playing music. Let's get physical playing music with a smile." And I guess a joke was started after that. But if you go and you check out a lot of Garth Brooks tour dates, because a lot of his tours are in the Midwest, Oklahoma. When I drove through there, there's a big water tower, home of Garth Brooks. And Midwest is a place, if you were going to be a serial killer, where would you be a serial killer? The Midwest. I mean, in the South, you wouldn't want to do it because it's too hot down there. In the North, too many people. I guess you could maybe do it in Pennsylvania. But if you were going to do it, and this is a big if you're going to be a serial killer, what state would you be a serial killer in? Definitely not Virginia. I mean, it could be done, but would I want to do that? No, I don't want to do it at all. But if I were going to, if I were forced to, if I had that urge to, Wyoming, Nevada, New Mexico. I mean, you could do North or South Dakota. I don't know. I've not been to North or South Dakota, but I've been to the other ones. But yeah, Garth Brooks, if you go and look, a lot of the serial killers in the Midwest coincide with his tour dates for many, many years. The defendant in this case, though, with Garth Brooks, also alleged that Garth Brooks planned to hire someone to murder her. The July 17th demand letter was the first time plaintiff learned of these allegations, which none have any basis of fact, states Garth Brooks. So, I don't know. It seems like, since Garth Brooks' heydays, back in the 90s, probably, and it seems like a lot of these older people can't keep their act together. You think it gets better as you age, as far as like a lot of mental health concerns and turning your life around, and it doesn't seem to be the case. Because also I was shown a Billy Ray Cyrus singing "Achy Breaky Heart" drunk, and I'm not sure what this is from. See if we can find this, because this was something that I couldn't. I remember when this came out, but I really could not even see this. I mean, it made me it made me sad. Mm. But yeah, Billy Ray Cyrus, I can't find the audio right now, but he was apparently, he's not with Miley Cyrus's mom Trish or Tish. I'm not sure if it's Trish or Tish. I don't know, Tish. Tish sounds like that would be her name. We'll go with that. But he's with a younger girl, and on the, I guess, her TikTok, she was showing, him and her holding each other and things like that, and then playing audio of him, telling her to shut up and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I understand that. I understand the video and audio of stuff like that doesn't look good. But when things like that happen, there are two sides to it. Just like with the Amber Heard, when she was recording things with Johnny Depp, obviously she's not going to say anything because she knows she's recording. She's only going to try to provoke. Same thing with this. Whether or not they were saying anything, which is possible, especially when drinking. I mean, drinking ups the ante of everything. And it's not an excuse, but it does. It ups the ante of almost everything. So, when you're recording someone without them knowing you're recording them, you're obviously not going to say anything that could incriminate yourself. So that has to be taken into context. And it's the same thing a lot with text messages. You can't just have a blatant, message with reading it out of context. I don't think that's fair to anyone. And that's what's happened. If you remember about in 2010, 9 or 10, Mel Gibson went through a very similar thing. We played that on the old show on the WEBR, where he was drunk, he was fighting with his girlfriend at the time. She had recorded his rants and ramblings and madness, and leaked those to the public, when in reality he should he have treated her that way? Of course not. Should he have said those things? Of course not. But he was being recorded, and he didn't know he was being recorded. And that's kind of the same thing in a lot of these situations. And I'm on the fence about that. It's good to have evidence. It's good to have, in context. But just because you have a video of someone screaming, calling you names, and they're not saying anything, a lot of the times, chances are, I'm not saying they did anything to deserve it, but it's not unprovoked. And I would imagine a lot of these cases aren't unprovoked as well. So, you just really need, if someone's going to make a judgment, they really need to understand the situation, what's really going on. And if they don't, then they just need to stay out of it, because there's no need to be on, team girl power, team man power. That's ridiculous. There's zero need for any of that. It's just utter ridiculousness. And it'd be best, really, if people just didn't care, but people love drama. People do love drama. And that's why I think, it had continued so long. I never thought that I would be playing Achy Breaky Heart on my show, but here I am. My grandmother purchased this cassette tape from Kmart. Kmart. The Blue Light Special. And I actually still have this cassette tape. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight on 92.5 WLSD The Vault, 12:20 a.m. Please go to all the social media. Please like and subscribe. It's free. Share. Get the word out. Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. And you all have a lovely night. Good night.